Good evening, this is Martin Sokol welcoming you to Through the Opera Glass. And this evening we're going to have the second installment of our series on John McCormack, a series that will probably run in the neighborhood of a year to a year and a half by the time we finish. With me in the studio is a young man, a singer, whose career has been very closely associated with that of John McCormack, though I would like to add from the very outset that he's a tenor very much to be respected in his own right, not as a second John McCormack, but as a first Robert White. Robert, thank you for being with us, and I'm glad you could make it.
Oh, so am I, and thank you for the nice thought.
How does it feel to be so closely associated with another singer, and a singer of the magnitude of a McCormack, really a god among singers?
Well, if you put it in religious terms, I guess it'd be like someone that got religion very early in life. It's really quite normal in one sense to me, only because McCormack, that is, represented from my childhood what beautiful singing was certainly all about, so that whether or not I ever got any recognition of my own, just as a singer, that was an art and a performing practice, in a sense that I aimed towards in my own way, of course. And the fact that a lot of people that loved that memory of John have responded to me very much, if I may say, as you just said to the audience, someone in his own right. They've responded in a way thanking me for helping bring the memory of that kind of tradition and that kind of singing back to them. And yet it still reflects as, of course, I'm the one doing it my particular way now.
Well, certainly one could have chosen an awful lot of poorer role models.
Well, that's the point. I think that's one of the great aspects of McCormack's gift to, or his legacy to all musicians, all singers, let alone just the listener at home, is it was such an excellent achievement as an artist that we all learned something from him.
Yes, indeed. Someone who could take really the most trivial piece of music, if one could refer to any music as being trivial, and turn it into an art song to communicate with listeners at all levels of musical erudition, whether they're professional musicians or people who don't know the first thing about music, but there was that communication. And this is something that you bring also.
Well, that's lovely. I think in McCormack's case, too, you could turn that whole thought around and say what he also did for the art song, which was to make it communicable,
yes,
to communicate with it, much in the way that the simpler piece of music might be expected to reach the audience. He did the same with his Schubert and with his Wolf.
I do recall reading someplace, I don't know where, but I read that he considered all music to be on a very high plane. He was not snobbish about any music.
No.
And that, of course, shows not only in his choice of recorded repertoire, but in his performance of that repertoire.
Yes, my parents told me often when I was a youngster what it was like for them, and that meant for the general public of that period, and I'm talking about the 20s and 30s, of course, and in my father's case in America, in the teens as well, going to a McCormack recital at Carnegie Hall or the old Hippodrome. It was a beautifully, almost mystical experience, they felt, because he was so wrapped in what he was doing in the music and the sharing of that, and the people were just there with him in a very special way. And it brings to mind, I think, one of the loveliest thoughts I ever read from the mind of Janet Baker, was where she said, we're all servants of the music. None of us could ever be bigger than the thing at hand, which is the music. No matter what the piece is, it's music, and that's bigger than any single person. It's a lovely thought.
Adriana's aria from Adriana Lecouvreur, Io son l'umile ancella.
Yes,
I'm the humble handmaiden of the arts.
It's beautiful, yes, and the opening of the Orfeo, Io la musica son. There's music coming right at us.
McCormack was a family friend.
Of my dad and mother, yes, indeed.
Yeah, did you know him?
No. So old I'm also not, as they say in some Schubert song. But no, they were friends, and as you well know, I have the joy of a very wonderful friendship with his son, Count Cyril McCormack, and his daughter, Gwen McCormack Pike.
I would like to mention at this point that a couple of weeks ago, when Cyril was in town for the first of your 3 recitals in the current series that you're doing. We did do a taped interview.
I loved that.
Yes, with Cyril and Robert White and my wife, Regina. And we will play that interview on our next McCormack broadcast, which will be the first Sunday in January.
What a nice way to start the new year.
Isn't it?
Yeah, wasn't that great, though, to be with Cyril and to...
Oh, indeed.
What a jolly, wonderful, warm human being. And the stories that he tells about that, he had an incredible past. He and his sister, they were like the Kennedy kids were in our generation. They were the children of this famous man, and they were lionized as children all over the United States. And it didn't affect them.
Well, actually, Regina, I think, really put a finger on it. When we left Cyril, she said that she had come with the expectation of meeting John McCormack's son, and she left with a feeling of having met Cyril McCormack.
That's beautifully said,
who, incidentally, happened to be John McCormack's son, but that was incidental.
Well, when he came to the first concert in November at Alice Tully Hall, I said to him, first of all, I was thrilled that he was going to come over from Dublin, and he would sit in the box there with Miss Tully. I said, Cyril, would it be possible for me to ask you to just take a bow at the end of the concert, which I will have sung, but if you don't mind, it would mean a lot to me. And he said, I'll do more than that, Robert. He said, I brought my smoking jacket over, my black tie, tuxedo over from Dublin. I want to come on the stage, and I'm going to give you something. Well, he doesn't talk quite like that. I'm imitating my childhood imitation of my mother's Irish accent. And, well, as you know, he gave me, it's still the most touching thing that ever happened to me, because when Cyril McCormack handed me that silver cup that had belonged to his father, and it said on it 1923, June 14th, which was the birthday of John.
Yes.
To John McCormack, it said, from family friends at that time named Stevens, this beautiful Irish cup with an Irish harp embossed in beautiful silver, and he gave it to me. I was just knocked out.
I'm sure you were.
I still am.
Yeah, that's just so very, very touching. Your own radio experience goes back several years at least.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, I mean, literally, I was doing cradle songs from the cradle.
From the cradle. Well, you were, of course, born into a musical and radio family.
Mm-hmm.
Your father was the Silver Masked tenor.
Indeed.
Yes. Of great fame, and
in the very beginning days of radio.
Yeah. Yeah. And how old were you when you made your radio debut?
5.
Really, from the cradle?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got $5 for it, too. It was a children's hour on... it was called WJZ in those days.
Oh, yes.
The American Broadcasting Company later. It had been part of NBC. When NBC, the call letters were WEAF,
mm-hmm.
Then there was some consent decree or something because it was too big, I don't know, and they broke them into 2 stations, right?
Yeah.
The Red Network and the Blue Network.
Right.
So WEAF remained NBC, and WJZ was the Blue Network, and that's what the show was on. With Milton Cross as the announcer.
Yeah. Yeah. Who, as if memory serves correctly, introduced you as our own little John McCormack, even back then.
Even back then, and I'd get out and, try to squeak out When the Dew is Falling, or I Hear You Calling Me, or Macushla, or one of my father's songs. It was great.
We do have a youthful tape of you. How youthful is that?
It's pretty youthful. I think I'm 9 or 10 in this one. I really moved into the big time fast, as you'll pick up on this tape. I want you to know that whatever comes out, however, all of you out there in Radioland, this little tape is just a kind of a home pickup from...
You are a busy man. Oh, yes, tonight I may appear with Jack Eigen if I can find out who he is. Who is this Jack? Are you going to tell me later? I said, yes, I give you a plain sealed envelope. Bing, I tell you what I'll do. If you'll let me make the picture of your life, I will tell you who Jack Eigen is. Honor bright. Done. By George. How does your story go? Well, of course, you're the star. The picture opens in 1925. We open in Spokane, Washington. You are 10 years old. The first scene is the living room of the Crosby home.
bananas. We have no bananas.
Bing. Oh, Bing.
Yes, Ma?
Is that you singing again?
It's a new song, Ma. Yes, we have no bananas.
Singing, you're always singing. Why aren't you ambitious like your brothers?
But, Ma!
Look at your brother Larry up at 4 o'clock every morning with his paper route.
Yes, Ma.
And brother Bob, the only boy with Western Union who owns his own bicycle.
Yes, Ma.
And little Everett working at the A&P. Why, every week Everett brings home $3 and all the groceries he can carry.
Ma!
You and your father are the only ones in the whole family not working.
Sit down, Ma. I'll sing you a song.
All right, Bing, but this is the last song today. Go ahead, son.
Bing, what a scene.
You liked it?
That voice you had as a little boy. Tell me, when did your voice change?
The day Phil Spitalny made me an offer.
How many know what that joke means? The day Phil Spitalny made me an offer.
That's very funny. Well, that was a very, very respectable voice for a 9-year-old.
It was worth $500 a shot in those days, too, let me tell you.
Oh, boy.
And that's 1949, $500.
Yeah, that's...
We shouldn't forget.
It's very, very beautiful.
Thank you. Well, there I was singing those songs. I mean, I was already a veteran by that time. I was 5 years into the fray.
Sure.
And belting it out. By the way, for those of you that might still be wondering, Phil Spitalny had a hugely successful program called The Hour of Charm with an all-girl orchestra. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Fred and Bing meant about the voice changing.
Wasn't Evelyn and her magic violin part of that group?
She was more than part of it. She was Mrs. Spitalny.
Yeah.
And I remember as a little boy, I used to appear on that show for the GE commercials. I'd get on and read them. And I used to go down for the rehearsals at what was called, I think, the Park Central Hotel, which is right there opposite Carnegie Hall or the Carnegie Delicatessen. And it had big radio towers on the roof, and they were way upstairs in a marvelous suite, I remember. And she would greet one in the Saturday morning, whenever it was that we came for the rehearsal, you know, and she was lovely. I remember Evelyn and her magic violin.
Well, let's get a little into a little more recent times.
Okay.
And you have a number of records out on RCA. You now have a record out on Angel as well.
Yes, The Gallant Troubadour.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a recent release, isn't it?
It's about 5 weeks out.
Yeah, yeah.
Out, that's Canadian. Out. Yeah, it's a lovely record, too. But we could talk about that one a little later, if you want.
Sure. What do we have now?
Well, here is one on my RCA recording called Robert White Sings Danny Boy and Other Irish Ballads. It's a brief and bright song called Trottin' to the Fair with Charles Gerhardt conducting.
Well, as a matter of fact,
Philharmonic.
that's one of these songs that McCormack recorded for Odeon.
And that's why I chose it. It's one of the earliest ones he did.
Okay, Trottin' to the Fair, Robert White.
Trottin' to the fair, me and Mal Maloney, seated, I declare, on a single pony. How am I to know that Molly's safe behind, with our heads in that awkward way inclined? By her gentle breathing, who whispered past my ear, and her white arms wreathing warm around me. Thus on Dublin's back I discoursed to the darling, till upon our track leapt a mongrel snarling. Ah, says man, I'm frightened that the pony'll start, and her pretty hand she tightened round my happy heart. Till I asked her, may I steal a kiss or so? And my Molly's grey eye didn't answer no.
That's absolutely delightful.
Isn't that a nice piece?
Yeah, oh, it really is.
And my Molly's grey eye didn't answer no. She said yes.
How long did it take to cultivate the Irish brogue? Or did it come very
As
naturally
long as it
at
took
home?
me to learn how to speak.
Okay.
Meaning I started out, in a sense, with that. My mother was born in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
She was from Galway on the west coast of Ireland. And so, you know, the aunts and uncles and all of that generation around me growing up in the South Bronx, which was totally Irish in those days, they all kind of talked like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, Bobby, you'll do it. You'll get there, son, you know.
Well, let me reverse the question. How long did it take to lose the Irish brogue?
It's one of the biggest struggles I have when I'm doing foray. I remember Albert Fuller, the wonderful harpsichordist and dear friend, one day some years back was going over some Rameau with me. And there I was, you know, Dieu cruel, and I was going on and on. And he stopped the harpsichord, took a minute for it to slow down, and he said... he says, Bobby, what are you doing about your Irish accent? I said, you mean in the ballads? He said, no, in your French.
I guess that could be a problem.
Nah, I love it. I mean, it certainly has served me well in Ireland, where I've had a huge success there with the audiences in concerts and on the telly. You know, they love it. They really took me in as one of their own because of my mother's roots.
Mm-hmm.
Literally coming from there. And when I sing those songs, I don't have to concoct the accent. I really don't. I mean, they have to be sung with that.
Yeah.
And if you fake it, it sounds pretty ugly.
You know, I must say that I really have marveled over the thought of an American, albeit one of Irish ancestry, but an American portraying John McCormack in Ireland for the Irish and accepted.
They loved it. Are you kidding? No, I did it on the BBC last season for his 100th anniversary. I had a whole hour's program singing everything, Mozart, Handel, Irish ballads, Irving Berlin, everything, telling the story. It was lovely. It was a moving experience for me.
Well, it does speak well for you that you could portray McCormack successfully enough.
I know what you mean. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
well,
I mean, really,
he in that sense was always my teacher. So my real teacher here is Beverly Johnson from the Juilliard, and I think if you can please those people that care enough to try to help you to learn whatever the heck it is you're learning, and that goes for you engineers out there and draftsmen and everything else, you know, it's a big deal, because it means that you're really trying to assimilate that wonderful experience that they have had or that they know about. And that's what learning is all about. So the learning of what McCormack left through the records, and of course what my dad had shared with me as a kid, was it meant everything to me.
Now, you've done a moderate amount of opera in your own right. I know that
Yes.
you've done some things on television. You've done some Baroque opera. What has your own operatic experience been?
It is not vast by any means. I've never felt that happy in opera. I think that my particular voice, this light lyric tenor that I am, is suited to Baroque operas and Mozart operas, not at all to the real 19th century verismo in any way. You know, so, and I was always happier singing in the concert field and the concert stage. It's just my head. You know, it's really as simple as that. So I went through a certain period of wishing that I could be everything to everyone musically, and therefore I had better get out and do my operatic stint and keep it up. But I haven't really wanted to, so I don't.
Okay, that's a good enough reason.
I sing arias. I mean, that's fun.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we're about to hear an aria. This is the Aubade from Le Roi Dix, and this is this from a recording or from a live performance?
This is from a live performance.
A live performance.
Yeah.
The Aubade from Le Roi Dix by Edward Lalo.
ne peut fléchir ces jalouses gardiennes. Oh, laissez-moi compter mes peines et mon émoi. Venez-moi, ma bien-aimée, on croit me désespérer près de ta porte fermée. Je veux encore demeurer. Les soleils pourront s'éteindre, les nuits remplacer les jours, sans t'accuser et sans me plaindre. Là, je resterai toujours. Je le sais, ton âme est douce, et l'heure bientôt viendra où la main qui me repousse vers la mienne se tendra. Ne sois pas trop tardive à te laisser attendrir. Si Roselle bientôt n'arrive, je vais hélas mourir, hélas mourir.
That was really very, very beautiful. The Aubade from Le Roi Dix, just gorgeous.
It's a lovely piece.
It is a lovely piece.
Maybe
and
if I could do the whole opera, I might just get in the costume and go out and do that.
It's a beautiful opera, incidentally, not just the
I've
aria.
never seen it.
Yeah, it was done within the past year or so in concert form.
Yes,
in
I
New York.
wasn't here at that time,
Yeah.
and I was really upset. I would have loved to have heard the whole thing.
It was
Yeah.
very beautiful. At this point, I have to interrupt ourselves, for just a minute to remind people that they are listening to radio station WBAI in New York, and this is Through the Opera Glass, a weekly feature of the station. I'm Martin Sokol. My guest tonight is Robert White, and we're talking about Robert White's career, and in a little while we'll be getting into John McCormack. And continuing, however, with some more of your material, there's a very beautiful performance of The Lost Chord, which I believe is also a live performance as opposed to a recording.
Yes, in Europe, and it's it's in tying, all of this in with your incredible tribute to John McCormack of playing his recordings for the next year or a year and a half every first Sunday of the month. I mean, that's just overwhelming when one thinks of it, because you're dealing with about 600 records there.
Yeah.
How can one say what their favorite McCormack record is? Well, one of my favorites of his, and there were many that was in fact his performance of The Lost Chord.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did it around 1915 or so. It seems to me it was.
Don't recall precisely, but it was
somewhere in that area.
Yeah.
And his singing, I remember, was so beautiful that he went into the wax that day. The orchestra, too, it sounded almost like an electrical recording, but it was acoustical at the time that his voice was in its prime. So when you get up to The Lost Chord in your series, that'll be fun. But if you'd like to hear a performance I did of it, I'd be delighted. And it's a piece that, again, this whole business of sending up, as they say in England, in other words, parodying or making fun of so much of the ballad repertoire or the slightly serious Victorian output is really it angers me, because this stuff is such gorgeous music in its own right.
Oh, it really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason it gets parodied is because it's so darn good, so anything after it that tries to imitate it usually falls flat on its face.
Mm-hmm.
And here is Sullivan's setting of this wonderful Victorian sentiment of the lost chord.
Well, let's hear it.
Okay.
One day at the organ, I was weary and ill at ease, and my fingers wandered idly over the noisy keys. I know not what I was playing, or what I was dreaming. I struck one chord of music like the sound of a great amen, like the sound of a great the crimson twilight, like the close of an angel's song, and it lay on my fevered spirit with a touch of infinite calm. It quieted pain and sorrow, like love overcoming strife. It seemed the harmonious echo from a discordant life. It linked all perplexed meanings into one perfect peace, and trembled away into silence as if it were loth to cease. I have sought what I seek it vainly, that one lost chord divine, which came from the soul of the organ and entered into mine. It may be that death's bright angel will speak in that chord again. It may be that only in heaven I shall hear that grand amen. It may be that death's bright angel will speak in that chord again. It may be that only in heaven I shall hear that grand
Gee, that is really beautiful. Is this going to be included in your concert on Tuesday?
Oh, I will be singing The Lost Chord in my series Alice Tully Hall. Let me think, but not that song this Tuesday. The Lost Chord is in the last of the series, which is January 7th, when I do the Irish songs as well as the religious songs that he did. So the Lost Chord comes into that, and as well as the Beethoven and Weber Scottish and Irish songs from my new Angel record.
Oh, that's nice.
But this Tuesday is...
what will you be singing on Tuesday?
Oh, that's a wonderful evening with Samuel Sanders playing piano. I've called that middle program the Art Song Legacy, and that gives us a chance to explore so much of the beautiful songs from the French and German repertoire, especially, and English, that McCormack made his own, and gave such a treat to singers to hear how he did it. So I was able to build a program starting with Schubert songs and Hugo Wolf and a Brahms piece as well, and then the melody of
Duparc.
No, I love Duparc, but I'm doing rather Chausson and Fauré and Debussy. Then I have some of the Elgar pieces, the English art songs, and Ah Moon of My Delight, which is such a great piece. Oh, what a piece of music that is. And some of the great ballads in the grand tradition, I call it, which includes, of course, his theme song, I Hear You Calling Me. So if anyone wants to hear I Hear You Calling Me live, come to Alice Tully Hall this Tuesday. And Mavis, and I think a brown bird singing. I have a bunch of those wonderful songs to do that night. Really, a Kashmiri song, remember? Pale hands I loved. But again, you do them with the same feeling that he put into those songs, and respect for the music, just as that Lost Chord. I mean, what a knockout. There's no amen like it in my book.
No,
maybe the end of the Messiah.
Certainly a beautiful piece of music.
Yeah.
And let's see, then we're going to hear another McCormack song, Thora.
That's one of his early ones again.
Yes,
yeah.
one of the Odeons.
Right.
And this is from... let's see, which LP is this?
This is my current RCA album called
Memories.
Memories, a tribute to John McCormack. And Ralph Mays is conducting the National Philharmonic Orchestra. And this wonderful song of Thora that was written by Adams, who wrote The Holy City and
Nirvana?
Nirvana, I think. Nirvana? Maybe. That leaves me... there's someone else lurking around, but I think you're right. But the words are by Fred Weatherly, who wrote about everything else in that era, including Danny Boy, Roses of Picardy, The Holy City, for that matter. And here's Thora.
Did he write the original English words to Tusty's Goodbye?
Maybe.
I think he did.
Oh, that's interesting. He's in everything. I think someone should do a record of Fred Weatherly, because I think he was also into the musical end of things too. But as a poet, he was part of some of the greatest hits that are still around today. I mean, just take Danny Boy for that matter.
Yeah.
But Thora is a knockout of a song. I mean, this is where the ballad really, I think, gets in on the operatic tradition in a big way. And the words are so great. You know, I stand alone, is it in the Northland, and your grave is my only landmark. And after all, people in those days were dropping like flies at the age of 25 with the flu, you know. So there was a lot of meaning to those songs. Or if they took a steamship and went off to the New World, they were gone for good. You just didn't pick up, Ma Bell or whatever and say hello.
Well, I think this is something that a lot of audiences simply don't realize because the thought just doesn't occur to them. The drama of many of these songs can't be judged by our times.
No, we have penicillin today. They didn't then.
Yeah, and unless one makes a conscious effort to place oneself back in time, it simply wouldn't occur to the listener.
And thereby comes the send-up. You see, people think, ha, 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 why were they carrying on like that? But it was real. Then if you get past all of that and just still relate it to human experience of today, if you loved someone and they're no longer there for whatever reason, it's a heartbreak. And then to think of it's being set in such wonderful musical and poetic terms as this song.
Well, let's listen to it. Thora.
Okay, we'll get...
I stand in a land of roses, but I dream of a land of snow, where you and I were happy the years of long ago. Nightingales in the branches, stars in the magic skies, but I only hear you singing. I only see your eyes. I only hear you singing. I only see your eyes. Come, come, come to me, Tara. Come once again and be child of my dream, light of my life, angel of love to me. Child of my dream, light of my life, angel of love to me. Angel of love to me. I stand again in the Northland, but in silence and in shame. Your grave is my only landmark, and men have forgotten my name. 'Tis a tale that is true and older than any the sagas tell. I love you in life too little. I love you in death too well. I loved you in life too little. I love you in death too well. Speak, speak, speak to me, Tara. Speak from your heaven to me. Child of my dream, love of my life, hope of my world to be. Child of my dream, love of my life, hope of my world to be. Hope of my world to be.
Thora by Adams, and certainly very much in the grand tradition.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
That's quite a song.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And they had the mutes on the whole time, and the violins and that, just to get that sheen. I loved that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And now we have, some Gershwin.
Well, I'd love it if you'd like. There's some Gershwin on a recording that I did for RCA in England, where they asked me to do Vernon Duke and Gershwin and Cole Porter and all those composers of the 20s and 30s. And that really was a delight to do. I remember I once sang as a young fellow with Vernon Duke. Actually, he played the piano.
Really?
Yeah, in April in Paris and Autumn in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another one, I think it's called April in New York or something. I can't. Anyway, it was down at the in Washington at the National Press Club, and I went down there for ASCAP years ago, I remember, and he was playing, and Dana Suisse was there, the lady that wrote so many, You Ought to Be in Pictures, and
Yes. Yeah.
right, and not My Silent Love, but They'll Come to Me. I mean, there's just, so many titles running through one's head when you're doing a show. But anyway, on this one, the Gershwin one that I'd love to do is Love Walked In. I remember hearing the Gershwin in that great play last season with Twiggy, My One and Only, and he loves, she loves. Well, I did those songs too. Here's Love Walked In.
Yeah, this, as I understand, is not available in this country.
This particular record isn't yet. RCA released it in England, but we will bring it out here later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's hear it.
Nothing seemed to matter anymore. Didn't care what I was headed for. Time was standing still. No one counted till there came a knock, knock, knocking at the door. Love walked right in and drove the shadows away. Love walked right in and brought my sunniest day. One magic moment and my heart seemed to know that love said hello. Though not a word was spoken, one look and I forgot the gloom of the past. One look and I had found my future at last. One look and I had found a world completely new when love walked in with you. One look and I had found a world completely new when love walked in with you.
Love Walked In by George Gershwin. How do you approach Gershwin in the same way as you would approach, Scarlatti or Adams, or do you look at these things differently at the very outset? If someone hands you a piece of music, how do you go about learning it? How do you go about interpreting it? Do you listen to recordings? What's your process?
Well, it's a little bit of all of the above. I couldn't help thinking it'd be analogous to if you were going to 4 different places, you get into the same car and you use the gears and the gas and the whole thing. You do the same thing and you just get the road map right and you know where you should turn here and maybe make a left there and have the stop sign there, and you know about that. You bring the same wherewithal to the task of getting there. And so in a sense, I bring the same wherewithal vocally and artistically and musically to whatever it is I sing. The first thing is to learn the notes. I mean, to know just what the musical shape is. Then I, in my case, I hope to be able to draw upon an innate sense of the style of the piece, if it's something that's within my ken, if it's something that I've had experience of listening and or performing. I will listen to other performances of something. I'd rather listen after I have done a big amount of work on my own to get the piece and let it be mine. If there are recordings, I might want to listen, and often I'll just hear a few bars and say, I don't want to hear that. But if I hear a recording and they're doing something that I love about it, great. And then bringing that further, if I'm under pressure, for instance, for a radio broadcast or a recording or something, for a piece that even stylistically is not something that I'm that used to, but in trying it I see, well, darn it all, I think I can encompass that. Then I will really listen to someone who has done it beautifully and has the style down pat. I think, for instance, I had to do some things in Europe of Charles Trenet, And I remember that I listened quite avidly to his performances of them because it was just that other step beyond what I was,
Sure.
sure of.
Sure.
But in doing the Gershwin, I didn't listen to anyone, and someone out there might say, "Ha ha, I knew that." But just listening to the way you did it, buddy. But really, I didn't, because the music of Gershwin, it knocked me over. When we got into the piece, I went crazy. I said, "This is a gorgeous piece of music. What elegance! What a great song." And I remember one other RCA record I made with Dick Hyman doing the orchestra leading and playing the piano and much of the arranging and all. One of the pieces on that is called Get Out and Get Under the Moon, which is ragtime, and I had never done anything like it. But do you know that within one go-through, I realized that I was going to be able to do that piece as if I was singing Scarlatti. I mean, I really just felt completely at home in it. It's not bragging. I'm answering your question.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of, can an ice skater do it or not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I find that fascinating. I realize it's not bragging, but it's interesting. I couldn't help thinking, when you drew an analogy with getting into your car and going there, if I've done all of my driving on city streets and highways and suddenly I find myself on a muddy dirt road.
Good idea, yeah. How do you do it then?
How do you do it?
You can mess it up or you can surprise yourself.
And that may be when you listen to the Charles Trenet recordings, because it is something outside of your experiences.
Yeah, maybe later, if I can fish it out of here, I'll play the thing that I lifted from Charles Trenet, but that would come a bit later. You can all start guessing what the song is. Anyway, speaking of Scarlatti, there is a recording I have of Le Violette, which I did in my first McCormack tribute at Alice Tully Hall.
Oh,
so
let's
here
listen
it is,
to that.
Le Violette.
Rugiadose, odorose, violette, graziose. Rugiadose, odorose, violette, graziose, violette, graziose. Voi vi state vergognose. Mezzo ascose fra le foglie e sgridate le mie voglie, che sono troppo ambiziose. Le sgridate le mie voglie, che sono troppo ambiziose. Rugiadose, odorose, violette, violette, graziose. Rugiadose, odorose, violette, violette, graziose. Violette, graziose. Voi vi state vergognose, mezzo ascose fra le foglie e sgridate le mie voglie, che sono troppo ambiziose. E sgridate le mie voglie, che sono troppo ambiziose. Rugiadose, odorose, violette, violette, graziose. Rugiadose, odorose, violette, violette, graziose. Violette, violette, graziose.
That was Violette of Scarlatti, and you had done that in the first of these three concerts. What was behind this three-concert series?
Well, I have been living in England and Ireland, for that matter, for the past 6 years or so, Martin, and I wanted to come back to America and what to do. I mean, I wanted to do a concert at Alice Tully Hall, and I thought it would be lovely to do it as a tribute to John McCormack. And in looking through all the materials on McCormack, in other words, the breadth of his artistic output, and talking it over with Alex Williamson, who put on the series, it became a series, we came to the decision very early on in this past year, for heaven's sakes, if you're going to do something for John McCormack in tribute to him, you can't get away with one evening. There is no way.
Sure, there are just too many facets.
There's just
to his
too many
art.
facets. I mean, what's the point? And since I've grown through my whole artistic life so much in love with so many of those facets, those artistic points, and I've worked in so many of those kind of vocal outputs, I thought, well, and I do them all the time, I will do it in a series of 3 concerts, which has allowed me to, as you remember, start off in November with Mark Piskanov playing the violin, much in the manner of Fritz Kreisler, as he did with McCormack, and Samuel Sanders playing the piano, much as Gerald Moore or Teddy, John's first, Edwin Schneider, his first pianist. Then I thought, well, I need a whole evening to even touch on the art song legacy, which I call it, which you'll hear on Tuesday. And then the last concert on the 7th of January is a Tuesday as well, and that will bring in both my new Angel record with the Scottish and Irish pieces of Weber and Beethoven, which in this case McCormack never did, but he well could have. He
certainly could
and
have.
would have done them beautifully, and it is my way also of not only presenting, of course, a new recording of mine and bringing on Eugenia Zuckerman and Fred Sherry and again Mark Piskanov on violin and Samuel Sanders, but also to show the living aspect of me as an ongoing performer, and then I was able to use those instruments as obligatos in some of the great McCormack religious pieces, such as Panis Angelicus and Ave Maria, and Just for Today. Those are the things I'll be doing on the last concert in the series in January, and then to close with the Irish songs that night. So if you come on Tuesday, the 7th of, what is it? I'm getting mixed up, the 3rd of December.
The 3rd of December.
This is when we'll do the Fauré and the Schubert and Wolf and
wouldn't miss
the great
it.
ballads. I'm looking forward.
Who are some of your other favorite singers?
Oh dear, in the classical world, because I would answer as well in the popular world, but in the classical world, of course McCormack, other singers, Janet Baker, I mentioned her earlier, Kirsten Flagstad, Beniamino Gigli, Tito Ruffo, we could go on, Jussi Björling, my goodness, what a voice, what a singer. Wow. If only Irish songs were in Swedish, then where would we be? I mean,
well, as a matter of fact, it's not quite an Irish song, but Björling did record For You Alone.
Yes,
in
he
Swedish.
did. Yes, he did. And Jeannie with the light brown hair in English with a little touch of Swedish still there. Oh, that was a great voice. I mean, talk about a sound that in no way is inside the throat. I mean, he was the killer of all time. I loved him. Anyway, by the way, I happen to have a Björling record. It's not hot off the presses anymore, but it's one of the great classics that Björling did. Could we play it?
Sure.
Well,
What is it?
It's not from Top Hat, but it was written by Fedora, or it is Fedora, I should say. It's Amor ti vieta.
That's my very favorite tenor aria.
Well, and my very favorite tenor in that Fach is doing it. Here is Björling's incredible recording of that.
Okay, let's listen to that.
Amor ti vieta.
Well, that was a switch. This evening was to be McCormack and White. Not that I have any objection whatever to playing Björling. Just out of curiosity, why did you happen to have a Björling record with you?
Because on that same record is John McCormack's Chant Paternel, the Mayul aria from Joseph.
Okay.
And that's so beautiful. But there was Björling, and I thought, why not? I mean, I remember turning on the radio yesterday morning, and out came... Or no, it was this morning. I heard two of my favorites. The Pearl Fisher duet, and that was the Merrill and Björling. And then Mein junges Leben hat ein Ende in the of Sweelinck on organ. And I hadn't heard that in years, and it was an E. Power Biggs recording. I said, wow, they're my favorites, you know. And so I thought there might be a few people that have an Amor Tibieta favorite syndrome.
Well, I'm one.
Great.
What do we have next, Robert?
Well, that's a good question. I have decided, as I say, for my last concert in the series, the January 7th one, to play and sing from my new Angel album of Beethoven and Carl Maria von Weber settings of Scottish and Irish songs. So I thought that perhaps from that new album we could hear the first cut, which is called appropriately enough Again My Lyre. It's a Beethoven setting of a very beautiful Irish melody, and it's with Mark Pescanoff on violin and Samuel Sanders, pianist, Nathaniel Rosen, cello. And I think in this one Ransom Wilson is not playing the flute because he's coming in the next piece. But anyway, here is Again My Lyre.
Good.
From The Gallant Troubadour.
Again, my lyre, yet once again, with tears I wake thy thrilling strain. O sounds to sacred sorrow dear, I weep but could forever hear. Cease no more, past scenes recall, ye plaintive note, the dying fall, for lost beneath thy loved control. Sweet lyre is my dissolving soul. Around me airy forms appear, and seraph songs are in my ear. Ye spirit blessed, bear away to happier realms my humble lay. For still my love may deign to hear those human notes that once were dear, and still one angel sigh bestow on her who weeps, who mourns here below.
It's very lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just charming. I love those Beethoven settings of the Scottish, English,
they're
and Irish
jewels.
songs.
They're jewels.
They really are. I'm going to bring you back to real Irish repertoire, if I may.
Well, no, I'll give you 20 minutes to stop that.
This is your Danny Boy from the I Hear You Calling Me album, and this is the piano-accompanied Danny Boy. There's also an orchestral Danny Boy on RCA.
Yes, this one was the second album I did for RCA with Samuel Sanders.
Incidentally, I must say that I think he's an absolutely brilliant accompanist.
Oh, he's unbelievable.
Yeah, just beautiful. And while I like the other Danny Boy, I do prefer the piano version.
Okay.
And he, everything about it, I think, is just marvelous. So let's listen to that.
Danny boy, the pipes are calling from glen to glen and down the mountain side. The summer's gone and all the roses falling. 'Tis you must go, and I must bide. But come ye back when summer's in the meadow, or when the valley's hushed and white with snow. 'Tis I'll be in sunshine or in shadow. Oh, Danny boy, I love you so. But when you come and all the flowers are dying, if I am dead as dead I well may be, you'll come and find the place where I am lying, and kneel and say an Ave for me, and I shall hear the soft you tread above me, and all my grave will warmer, sweeter be, for you will bend and tell me that you love me, and I shall sleep in peace until you come to me.
That is such a beautiful song. I just
There's
love
nothing like Danny Boy.
No.
I mean, it's the universal song,
it.
isn't it?
It really is.
I can hardly get away at the end of a concert, no matter what it is. I could have been doing Bach cantatas the whole evening. They always say at the end, "Oh, would you sing Danny Boy?" when I'm over in England or Ireland. Yeah, it's a great song.
It really is. You were mentioning something before about Charles Trenet.
Oh, wonderful. I remember when I first started to study French as a kid in high school, I had... what was the song I learned from a recording of it? So yes, Les enfants s'ennuient le dimanche, les enfants s'ennuient. And I had to remember where you put S''ENNUIENT, and I said, how can that sound like s'ennuie? But anyway, that was my start with him. And then when I was doing some songs in Europe and with the orchestra, they said, hey, we'd like something to really lighten things up. And here's a great song, and it's called Boom. Well, I looked at the music and I thought, this is when I have to get Charles Trenet's record, because this whole idea of everything in life goes boom, but most of all, my heart goes boom when I see you, so that even the little Thanksgiving turkey goes glue, 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 and all these different sounds, but boom is when I see you. Well, here's the song, and it's really a charmer.
It sounds fascinating.
I love it.
La pendule fait tic-tac, tic-tic. Les oiseaux du lac pic-pac, pic-pic. Glou, glou, glou font les dindons. Et la jolie cloche a ding-dindon. Mais boum, quand notre cœur fait boum, tout avec lui dit boum. Et c'est l'amour qui s'éveille. Boum, il chante Love in Bloom au rythme de ce boum qui redit boum à l'oreille. Tout a changé depuis hier et la rue a des yeux qui regardent aux fenêtres. Il y a du lilas et il y a des mains tendues sur la mer. Le soleil va paraître, ah, boum. L'astre du jour fait boum. Tout avec lui dit boum quand notre cœur fait boum boum. Le vent dans les bois fait boum. La bichose à bois fait miais, la vaisselle cassée fait fric, fric, frac, et les pieds mouillés font flic, flic, flac. Mais boum, quand notre cœur fait boum, tout avec lui dit boum. L'oiseau dit boum, c'est l'orage. Brrr, boum, l'éclair qui lui fait boum. Et le bon Dieu dit boum dans son fauteuil de nuages. Car mon amour est plus vif que l'éclair, plus léger qu'un oiseau, qu'une abeille. Et s'il fait boum, s'il se met en colère, il entraîne avec lui des merveilles. Ah, boum, le monde entier fait boum, tout avec lui dit boum, quand notre cœur fait boum, 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 boum.
That's absolutely delightful. Just charming.
Oh, those words, aren't they something else?
They're wonderful. Where did this particular performance stem from? Was this a recording, or...?
It was. I was broadcasting it in Europe, and that's how that all came up. And just to have the chance to do all kinds of songs. So I was singing Handel and Mozart and boom.
Trenet.
Yes, and why not? But I mean, that really is what we were talking about. It's all music.
Sure it is.
And if you feel comfortable in the style of any given thing and want to do it, do it. I see that Kiri Te Kanawa has an album out now of I think Gershwin and Porter songs and things like that. And
well, look, Caruso did it with countless
absolutely.
Neapolitan ballads, as well as songs like Over There and
Over There. Yes.
Yes. And of course Chelyapin, certainly, with all the Russian ballads. Geraldine Farrar had a recorded repertoire very much like McCormack's in many
Every
ways.
time that they introduce Geraldine Ferraro on the radio for a political talk or something, I keep thinking I'm going to hear VC Dante. It's true. I still
Sure.
It's like Mary Martin's birthday is today. I can't wash that name right out of my hair. Anyhow, these songs have been a delight to do, and it all stems back to the extraordinary thing you're doing, Martin, which is this tribute that you're making to John McCormack, which will stretch over the next year and a half, and mine is just a mere 3 programs. That explains it to the people out there. Why does one do 3 programs, as we talked about before?
Yeah.
You can do 100 and still not run out of McCormack material.
Sure.
That's the brilliance of it all, I think. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of John when I'm finished with my little stint this evening.
I'm just so thankful that McCormack did record as prolifically as he did.
Yes.
And I don't have all of his records. I have a goodly number of them, and we certainly will be getting a good representation of him. Would that I had the missing ones. It would be very nice to do the series absolutely complete for both artistic and documentary reasons.
Indeed. I not all of them really do exist, do they? I mean, what's printed on the page as having been recorded, not everything still exists in the world.
Well, even among those that were actually published, I'm not sure that they all exist, because first of all, when we go back to the very early period, very, very few people had talking machines. It was an expensive luxury, and consequently not terribly many records sold. And when you couple that with the fact that at that point McCormack was not yet a celebrity,
right,
people simply weren't spending money on records by an unknown Irish tenor.
But that only lasted a couple of seasons, because...
Sure, but we're only talking about a few of the very early
recordings. The 1904, 1905,
sure.
6 area, yes.
But, at that point when people didn't yet know who John McCormack was, when they could go into their record stores and buy recordings of Caruso, or De Lucia, or Tamagno...
They could then. I mean, they were already
or
big
McCormack.
stars. Yeah, I see, yeah.
The very few McCormack records sold at that point,
yeah,
and consequently very few have survived, if any.
From his very beginning days, and the cylinders and that, but then the hundreds upon hundreds that have. How glorious.
Oh, yes.
But the big aria he supposedly did from Lucide, Oh, Souverain, that's...
Well, that, of course, was not published.
It was not published, but there's nothing existing of it, is there?
No.
I would love to have heard him sing that. It would have been a perfect voice for it.
And also the Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Olive Trois Soleils.
Yes. Wow.
There were a number of things that should have existed, that at least on paper sound like they should have been wonderful. He did a Ma Paris for Victor, and certainly Ma Paris should have been absolutely ideal.
He could have fallen off a log doing that one.
Of course, but it was not published. I have no idea of why, but there we are. I do want to play one more cut of You before we get to John. And that's that very lovely little lullaby, Christopher Robin.
Oh, what a lovely song. McCormack never recorded that, by the way.
No, he didn't.
It's not existent, but I do have it on my recording of memories, a tribute to John McCormack, because in speaking with Count Cyril, John's son, we found out that it was one of the favorite songs. I mean, John sang Cyril's children to sleep with that one, and I loved it because my dad used to sing it to me.
Isn't that nice?
Yeah, he taught it to me, in fact. And he always said, when you do Christopher Robin, Bobby, be careful not to over-sentimentalize it. He said, because it's a lovely thing, but it's really a borderline case. If you go too far, then it could be mawkish. You have to be careful. And I took that to heart. And, the wonderful Swiss tenor Hugues Queneau, who's done so many incredible things in the really recherché repertoire. I remember when I showed this recording to Hugues Queneau, I thought the last thing that Hugues would be au fait with would be Christopher Robin is saying his prayers, and sure enough, that man who's to everything in music. I mean, he not only does his Monteverdi and his Poulenc and things impeccably, but he was in the 1929 Bittersweet of Noel Coward. I found it. Yes. And he looked at this and says, "Oh, Bobby, look. A. Mill. Now, he was related to my grandmother or something like that." He said, "There's Christopher Robin." I said, "Oogie, you're all over the place."
That's incredible.
But here's the song.
Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed, droops on the little hand's little gold head. Hush, hush, whisper who dares, Christopher Robin is saying Mommy, I know that's right. And wasn't it fun in the bath tonight? The cold so cold and the hot so hot. Oh, God bless Daddy, I quite forgot. If I open my fingers a little bit more, I can see Nanny's dressing gown on the door. It's a beautiful blue, but it hasn't a hood. Oh, God bless Nanny and make her good. Mine has a hood and I lie in bed and pull the hood right over my head. And I close my eyes and I curl up small. And nobody knows I'm there at all. Oh, thank you, God, for a lovely day. And what was the other I had to say? I said, bless Daddy, so what can it be? Oh, now I remember it, God bless me. Little boy kneels at the foot of the bed, droops on the little hand's little gold head. Hush, hush, whisper who dares? Christopher Robin is saying his prayers.
Christopher Robin is saying his prayers, a record that John McCormack never made. Would that he had. Although you've done something to fill that gap.
Thank you. Well, I love the way it just goes off at the end there. And it meant a lot to me, that song, as a kid. I used to love it.
It's a beautiful song. It really is. The words, the music.
Yeah, those are feelings that, I don't know, people are so often afraid to even express them anymore, and I don't know why.
I must say, I was unacquainted with the song till I heard your recording of it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because I really have sung that since I was a little boy. Mm-hmm. And I always thought it was beautiful. I thought it was one of the few things dedicated to little kids while we were kids.
Yeah.
While I was singing it.
It really is just like
No, I liked it. I mean, I didn't particularly say my prayers at night either growing up, even though I was in an Irish Catholic household.
Uh-huh.
But somehow, in the song, it sounded really like the right thing to do.
We're going to move on to John McCormack.
With great pleasure.
And our last McCormack broadcast concluded with his recording of Pianto del Core, a 1908 recording, August 31st, 1908 specifically, one of the records he made for Fonotopia Odeon. And this, two more records were made at that session that produced the Pianto del Core, two takes of La Donna Immobile, Matrix LX 2491 takes 3 and 4, 1 and 2 having been made at an earlier date. The take 3 was unpublished, but we will hear the take 4. This was recorded in London on August 31st, 1908. Matrix LX 2491 take 4, La Donna Immobile from Verdi's Rigoletto.
Muta d'accento e di pensiero, sempre una chi lei confido mal calcolatore, pur mai non sente di felice pieno, chi su quel seno non liba amore. La donna è mobile, vuol più malventa, muta te.
There is nothing wrong with your radio transmitters. Incredibly, that's the way the recording ended.
In those days, they just said, "All right, gentlemen."
Yeah.
That was like, but the freshness of John's voice, 1908.
Right.
He was a kid.
Yeah.
He had just done the season before there in 1907, his debut as Turidu, no? At Cavalleria Rusticana at the Garden, at Covent Garden. 23, he was now pushing 24 with his La Donna Mobile. Incredible.
Really, just beautiful. And that concluded that August 31st, 1908 session. It would be only a little over a month before John was back in the studios on October 3rd. But before that, you are singing a concert in, under 48 hours.
I am indeed. So I'm going to go home and go to bed.
I don't blame you the least bit, and thank you for coming out 2 nights before a concert on a night like tonight to be with us.
Well, it's a joy for me. I'll see you Tuesday at
Certainly.
Alice Tully Hall.
And in Bocca al Lupo, or
Grazie tanto.
what do the Irish say?
They say that's a good thing. They say, "Well, good luck and may the good Lord bless you." I don't know. They're pretty good about it, but they don't have that bocca al lupo and le gros mot, as the French say, as opposed to saying the bad word. They just say the big word, the gross word.
Hals und Beinbruch.
Hals und Beinbruch. The Germans want the leg
Right.
to break. It's
Right.
really funny. Each country has their own way of saying good luck.
Well, all of these wonderful things, good luck on your concert Tuesday. I certainly am looking forward to it. And let's see, for listeners, let's give them a little bit of information. That's at Alice Tully Hall.
That's right. It's Robert White, homage to John McCormack with Samuel Sanders this Tuesday at Alice Tully Hall.
And it is an 8 o'clock curtain.
8 o'clock curtain it is, and you will hear the art song legacy, the Schubert, Brahms, Wolf, Fauré, Debussy, English Elgar, and the great ballads, I Hear You Calling Me, Kashmiri Song, Moon My Delight.
Well, I certainly am looking forward to it. And
Thank
once
you.
again, thank you and good luck.
Thank you for letting me come in and say hello to your friends.
See you Tuesday.
Bye.
And now, back to John. October 3rd, 1908, Savurnin Dilish. His second take of this is LX 2133, take 2. And this is an old song. I don't know who the composer is. I don't think anyone knows who the composer is. It's a record that was apparently quite popular because it was released on European Odeon single and double-faced, on Phonotypia, on Regal, on Ariel, which was an American Odeon label. It shows up on LP. It's had wide circulation. And here is take 2, Matrix LX 2133, take 2 of Savurnin Dilish.